Audiobook of The Laws of the Spirit World by Khorshed Bhavnagri. Forward. All my life I have been asking questions, always perceived things differently from most people, which was a result of my thirst for knowledge. Ever since I was young, I would gaze at the stars and somehow know that we were not alone in the universe, that I had friends in the spirit world, my guardian angels who always love and look after me. My family taught me to be respectful of all religions. An inborn curiosity led me on a journey. In time, I became a firm believer in Sai Baba of Shirdi, and I told him about then that I came across a lady whose name was Khorshed Bhavnagri. The first day I met her and spoke to her departed sons, Wispy and Ratu, I felt a great kinship when they called me small brother. The knowledge that I gained about the afterlife through Khorshed Bhavnagri, or Khorshed Auntie, as I called her, was recognition more than discovery. It was something my soul already knew. To me, the afterlife is simply an extension of this life. We are all spokes of wheel coming from a center, which is one God. We all are connected. In the 25 years of learning with her, Khorshed Auntie was much more than my spiritual master. She was my best friend, someone I could trust, someone who was open minded, non judgmental, aware, had a great sense of humor, and possessed a luminosity and healing energy. She helped me appreciate the value of experiences. She made me understand that the positive experiences were my blessings, ones that I should be grateful for, and that the negative ones were not to be feared, for they were my real teachers. A simple God bless and all will be well from her were enough to put my fears to rest. I was completely open with her and discussed everything: God, my relationships, my work, the difference between religion and spirituality, karma, past life, the purpose of rebirth, prophets, angels, psychic phenomena, extraterrestrial, why human beings are self destructive, death, old age, loneliness, fear, the healing nature of crystals, the importance of now, the power of intention, thought, and importance of prayer, whether God is kind or punishing, how I could understand the meaning of it all and evolve, and realize my place and function in the grand design and scheme of things. Khorshed Auntie answered all my questions, but always told me that, in the end, the most important thing was to be a good human being on earth and always follow the godly good path. She made me realize that I was solely responsible for my actions and that I could not blame God for anyone else for whatever came my way. She also taught me the importance of self service, controlling the mind, spreading God's knowledge, and guiding and comforting people who had lost their loved ones. When I needed guidance most, Khorshed Auntie and her husband, Rumi Uncle, whom I was extremely close to, offered me a loving environment full of wisdom and laughter, in which my spirit was nurtured, trained, and eventually freed. Even though they are not alive anymore, I feel I have two more angels in the spirit world looking after me. I do not mourn their absence because I know that they are with me all the time. Moreover, they have left with me the most valuable of all guides, spiritual knowledge. Please read this book with an open mind and understand how simple and powerful the truth really is. Wispy always emphasized that this knowledge could be understood even by a child and that the truth is always simple. Fortunately, I'm not the only one whose life has been changed by Khorshed auntie and Rumi uncle. Over the last 25 years, thousands of people came to them and received spiritual knowledge, guidance, comfort, and healing. I hope this book does the same for you. God bless. Shyamak Davar. Preface. Khorshed and Rumi Bhavnagri lived in Baikala in Bombay, India with their two sons, Vispi, who was born on August 9th, 1950, and Ratu on December 13th, 1951. As the boys grew up, they were extremely interested in all aspects of motoring. Eventually, Vispi and Ratu set up a garage for motor services and repairs. They also participated in several motor rallies. In the fateful year of 1980, Vispi and Ratu were to enter a 1,632-mile cross-country motor rally. The rally was to start on February 23rd, and Vispi and Ratu decided to take the car out for a trial run from Bombay to Khopoli before the event. Khorshed narrated what happened just before their sons set out on their journey. Ratu hugged me tight, said goodbye, and went out. He hardly went down a few steps. We lived on the second floor. Then he came running back to the door to me. Again he hugged me tight and kissed me. I could not understand why, because this was unusual for Ratu. He went down one floor, then once more he came back running to me and held me tight and hugged me. By then Wispy came to wish me good-bye as well. I told them to drive carefully. They said, "Don't wait for us, Mamma. We will go till Khopoli and return, or we may stay overnight and come back tomorrow morning." Just as they got into their car, the boys met their father. Rumi told them to drive carefully. Ratul replied, "Why are you worried, Daddy? In any case, we can't go over 30 miles per hour since we have just overhauled the engine. We will be all right." So at 8:30 that night, Wispy and Ratu set out in high spirits, along with two mechanics and a friend. When they did not return by 8 o'clock the next morning, Khorshed and Rumi began to worry. At 8:30 a.m., a mechanic from the boys' garage came over, saying that there had been an accident somewhere near Khopoli and that both Wispy and Ratu were in hospital. Rumi rounded up a few friends and sped towards the accident site at Khopoli. There they found Wispy and Ratu's car smashed into a tree. Nobody was around, but they learned that the boys had been rushed to the hospital a few minutes away. When Rumi got to the hospital, he was told that both Wispy and Ratu had been killed on the spot, but the other occupants of the car had escaped with minor injuries. Rumi had asked the mechanic what had caused the accident. All they said was, "We were asleep one minute and the next minute there was a crash." Everything felt unreal to Rumi. He was fortunate to have his friends and neighbors with him to help with the formalities in the hospital. With a heavy heart, he returned home and wondered how to break this tragic news to his wife. As Rumi painfully climbed the stairs to his apartment, Khorshid kept asking him from the landing, "Why have you taken so long? Where are Wispy and Ratu? Why can't you move faster?" When Khorshid heard the news, she broke down. She felt she had nothing to live for. Khorshid's faith in God was shaken. "I had never been very religious," she said. "Now, for the first time, I began to question whether there was a God. If there was a God, then why should He do this terrible thing to me? Snatch my sons away, when I have never harmed a hair on anyone's head." I was ready to give up God, religion, and life. Then something wonderful happened. On the 29th day after the funeral, a neighbor named Mrs. Dastoor told Khorshed and Rumi an amazing story. Mrs. Dastoor's sister-in-law had gone to a concert and during the intermission overheard a lady speak to two boys who had recently died in an accident and wanted to send a message to their parents. So Mrs. Dastoor's sister-in-law had taken down the lady's telephone number. The next day, Khorshed and Rumi got in touch with this lady and she invited them to her house. She had lost her brother and was in contact with him through seances organized by a powerful medium named Mrs. Kapadia. On one such occasion, the seance was interrupted by a cry from two young boys. The boys said they had died in an accident and that their parents were shattered. They wanted their parents to know they were happy in the spirit world and not to worry as they could see their parents. On March 22nd, 1980, Khorshed and Rumi attended a group seance at Mrs. Kapadia's residence on Nepean Sea Road. Mrs. Kapadia, the medium, sat in the center and the others were seated around her. She moved from one person to another to assist them in their communication with their dear ones who had died. When Mrs. Kapadia came to the Bhavnagris, the first words uttered by her were, "Hello, Mummy, Fatso." That was what Wispy had always called his mother. The fact that a stranger knew such an intimate detail was what gave Khorshed and Rumi proof that it was their sons, and this restored their faith in God. Wispy and Ratu then told their parents that they wanted to talk to them alone. So Mrs. Kapadia gave them the name of another medium, an elderly lady called Mrs. Rishi. A few days later, the Bhavnagris spoke to their sons through Mrs. Rishi. They said, "Mom and Dad, this is Wispy and Ratu. Yes, we died and reached the spirit world within minutes of our death. It is God's will, and God knows what is best for each one of us. God is good. You must not cry for us or miss us. We are much happier here. We can see you all the time, and we are looking after you. We cannot communicate with you until you are completely relaxed and happy. You have to develop powers of concentration." They also told her that she had to stay on earth to do her spiritual mission, which was to help people and spread spiritual awareness. Over the next few months, Khorshid and Rumi, with the help of their sons, developed powers of complete concentration and relaxation, which made direct communication between the parents and their sons possible through a process known as automatic writing. She would hold a pen lightly onto a book, concentrate intensely, and gradually the spirits of her deceased sons would use her hand to move the pen slowly and unevenly over the page. At first, There were mere scratches, but with days of patience, words formed, and she would ask questions aloud, to which the answers would come written onto the book. Shortly after the boy's death, a very unfortunate family problem arose, and Khorshid and Rumi had to resort to litigation. Contrary to the advice of some lawyers who said they should not fight the case, Khorshid and Rumi chose the lawyer on the advice that their deceased sons conveyed to them telepathically. To their surprise, against all odds, the litigation came to a successful conclusion. This was one more sign that the Bhavnagaris were indeed being guided and protected. After some time, Vispi and Ratu conveyed their parents a desire to dictate, by the same process of automatic writing and then telepathically, a book containing the laws of the spirit world, for which they had obtained special permissions from the higher souls. They thought it would be of considerable benefit to human beings on earth to know the true laws of God and the spirit world, which, if followed, would help them advance spiritually. It was the desire of Vespi and Ratu that the book be dictated, published, and distributed widely. However, Vispi and Ratu were very clear that their teachings and beliefs were not to be forced on anyone. As friends, and even strangers, heard of Khorshid's communications with her sons, they came pouring in at the Bhavnagari's residence. Khorshid and Rumi slowly realized that by reducing the pain of others through selfless service, their own pain was being considerably reduced. This was how they found solace after the death of their sons. They provided guidance and comfort to both young and old. By sharing their story, they prevented people who had suffered a similar loss from being consumed by sadness. They counseled people regarding problems ranging from addictions to physical abuse, but eventually they nourished those souls who had a true thirst for spiritual knowledge and a desire to improve spiritually. People posed questions, both spiritual and personal. Many of those questions have been reproduced in part 2 of this book. As there is no religion in the spirit world, questions and answers that relate purely to any particular religion have been excluded. Rumi and Khorshed Bhavnagri passed away in 1996 and 2007 respectively, and are happily reunited with their sons in the spirit world. Note: Khorshid auntie would communicate with Wispy at least twice a day, sometimes 3 to 4 times a day, only between sunrise and sunset, with no fixed agenda or plan. She received messages on various topics, the sequence, conversational tone, and language of which have been preserved exactly as they were received. The messages reproduced here are the ones she received in English, even though her mother tongue was Gujarati.